Hello everyone. Welcome. It is Wednesday, November 9th, 2022, here in the Dallas, Texas area. I'm having some connection issues today, and so we're going live right now on Facebook, but like YouTube's having some issues, so I may have to just continue to go on with Facebook. Hello, I see Tina out there. Again, temperatures today are going to be about 80 degrees in Texas, the great state of Texas, and a little bit breezy out today, and doing this broadcast. Sometimes the connections, I guess on the Wi-Fi, might have some issues today. So anyway, we'll be doing this live, at least from Facebook, and if YouTube can work and or connect, then great. If not, we'll have to convert it. But anyway, yesterday was my wife and I's 20th anniversary. We've been married for 20 months at this point. And looking forward to continued every day. It seems like we just enjoy what the Lord has done in bringing us together. We enjoyed actually yesterday going out to McKinney, Texas. If you're not familiar with McKinney, it's just northeast of Dallas, and they have a wonderful historic district that has lots of shops that are fun to walk around, walk through, lots of restaurants to eat at, and so we enjoyed yesterday and last night, enjoying a wonderful dinner and enjoying some ice cream after all of that. So our breakthrough tour continues December 3rd in Dallas, Texas, in Plano, at the Courtyard. We now have 47 people signed up, registered on Eventbrite, and another 24 on Facebook. So what was that? 47, 24, 70 some people that are signed up to come out to Dallas, Texas. So we're looking forward to seeing a great crowd. That's on December the 3rd at 7 p.m. start time at the Courtyard by Marriott in Dallas and Plano. And then we're looking to schedule in January and February an event in Waco, Texas, and then April 15th and 16th coming to Merkel, Texas, to Fountain Gate Church. So the topic of the day is, do you really trust in God? You know, have you ever thought about your faith in trusting God? Sometimes you can be right in the middle of His perfect will, and yet you're suffering tremendously and having a lot of pain, a lot of persecution. You know, again, you could even be led into your current circumstances by the Lord because He has such a great producer of fruit in your life that is coming after all of this. So you may have to go through some suffering, some extreme stuff, and you're right in the middle of where you're needing to be with the Lord. So again, you know, the Bible talks about that you're going to have to go through some trials and persecution and tribulations. And so understand that you can be right in the middle of the Lord's perfect will, and yet you're not at peace, and yet you're struggling, yet you're in a lot of pain. And it could be the current relationships that you are around. You could be, you know, in relationship with people that are struggling themselves. Maybe they're hearing from the enemy, and they're triggering on you, and it's not the way that it should be. So understand that can definitely be a situation of where you're in currently, you know, right now. And if that is the case, you know, oftentimes you can't do anything about it. You're going to have to stay in it, and it's up to you if you want to complain, if you want to say, you know what, this is not the Lord, there's no way, I give up, I'm mad at God, you know, and you don't want to be in that position. You want to trust the Lord, and you want to be able to stay in a state of peace as much as you can in a very challenging situation. So it's how you want to deal with that situation. You think about, some of the greatest people in the Bible had to go through some extreme stuff that was not fun to go through. So the Lord could put you in a position where you're going to have a lot of suffering, and a lot of times you're going to be suffering from people that are churchgoers who would call themselves Christians, and they're going to say things and do things to hurt you. You could suffer because of being in a marriage to someone that you should not, you would not normally expect to have to go through some extreme stuff. But there's a lot of people that are in marriages where they have a husband or a wife that are not healed, are not delivered, and therefore those spouses are triggering on you. And you may be in that situation for months, it may be years, but do you really trust in God that God wants the best for you? He wants to protect you. And there may be a season where you have to go through some extreme suffering. And a lot of people that follow our ministry have heard about the spirit of Jezebel. And that spirit of Jezebel is in a lot of people because they've been hurt and they've been wounded. That's how you get that spirit. And it causes you to hear a lot of demonic thoughts in your mind, and it causes you to want your way. And so if you're in a relationship with someone that is not healed and not delivered, doesn't even think that they could ever have any demonic spirits, then you might be struggling in that situation. And then it's up to you. Do you really trust the Lord to bring you through to the other side? Most people want to live in a life of peace. They don't want to live in a life of struggle and strife and fighting and arguing. Who wants that? Well, I had to go through that myself. I had to walk through it myself personally so that I could help other people. If I did not know what the spirits of Jezebel looked like, and the characteristics of people that have it are all common. They're all controlling. They're all manipulative. There's normally a sexual side to them that is not pure. And they demand their own way. They're very prideful. They're very arrogant. It's very hard to be in a relationship with people like that. But if I had not gone through it myself, I would never have known what it looked like. And there's a lot of people in the world that have never dealt with people that are operating in that. They don't know, and they really can't give good advice. And there's a lot of people in the church that could be pastors that if they've never experienced it themselves, then it's going to be really hard for them to give wise advice to you. So some of the sufferings also that we go through could be, oftentimes it is the case, I've taken thousands of people through personal sessions, is that they were hurt and they were wounded, oftentimes sexually, where they were exposed to pornography, or they were touched sexually, or they had a father or mother that wounded them, that said things to them that they should not have. And then ultimately what happened was that they were hearing a lot of demonic thoughts, which caused them to make decisions in their own lives that were not good. I see people all the time that are struggling with addictions to unhealthy things, such as alcohol, such as drugs, such as food. Could be even exercising. You could be exercising for hours and hours and wanting to eat only organic food, and you can't touch anything that's got sugar in it, and all these things that get kind of the extreme of things. And if you get into the extreme and you have no peace, then what good is all that? So there's a lot of people that are addicted to a lot of things, and they've made wrong choices, bad decisions, because their demons drew them into relationships with people who are not healthy, who are not godly. And then they end up having the fallout from that, where people are abusing them, or maybe they're abusing other people. So God, always has our best interest at heart. He wants to use all things that were meant to hurt us from the enemy to be used for our benefit. And he'll use all of our pain if we'll let him. If we'll listen to him instead of trying to force our will, we end up trusting in him and using our most painful areas of our life for good, to help others who are struggling in their lives. So many people that have been hurt and wounded, what they'll do is they'll hear a lot of demonic thoughts that will tell them it's a great idea to drink a bunch of alcohol, to drown themselves in their sorrows for a couple of hours. And then they end up waking up with a hangover, and they end up worse off than they were before, carrying a lot of demonic stuff. People that take drugs, that are addicted to those drugs, it's because they were hurt, they were wounded. People that are struggling with sexual impurity, looking at pornography and having relationships outside of marriage that people are not married to. All of that goes back to their wounds. You get those wounds healed, you forgive people who hurt you, you get delivered, you no longer struggle with making unhealthy decisions or ungodly decisions. You're going to be making good decisions where you'll be blessed, and you'll be able to discern relationships that you should be a part of and relationships you should have nothing to do with people. Again, you see this oftentimes with people in their inner circle of people, that if they're hurt and wounded, they will oftentimes have other people that were hurt and wounded as their friends. And some of them are trying to gain approval from people from the opposite sex, sometimes people from the same sex, from alcohol, from physically trying to make themselves look sexually appealing, but then they end up drawing these people that are sexually impure to them, and they end up having no peace, no blessings from that. And same thing with people that getting into smoking, and lots of people have gotten tattoos, and the people are oftentimes, the enemy has told them that this is a good thing to do. Go ahead and do this, and then they end up getting their bodies completely tattooed up. And obviously, it's not a salvation issue whatsoever. But the reason why they've done that is because they were hurt, they were wounded, and the enemy was speaking to them, telling them this is a good idea. And then oftentimes they regret it later and say, "Man, I wish I wouldn't have done that." But it's fine. It's not a salvation issue. But I'm just saying that there are things that we spend money on, things that we spend our time on, that are not in alignment with what the Lord would want for us. So the question is, oftentimes the enemy wants to hurt us, wants to wound us in a very strong way, so that we will ultimately make bad decisions. Wow, it's getting breezy. Bad decisions that will hurt us and wound us, and then cause us to blame God. If he can get us to blame God, then we're not going to trust God. And a lot of people in the churchgoers don't trust God. They say that they do, but they don't. They trust themselves, and they want to make their own decisions to do what they want, and they don't trust their spouse. They don't trust other people. They could be trusted. It's because they don't trust anyone, because they've been hurt and wounded, and have had heard a lot of demonic spirits that have been speaking to them. So when we can see that all those who have hurt us when we grew up were also hurt, then we can truly forgive them from our hearts. We can repent for our own sin, repent for our own pride. Pride can be really hard to see in a person's life. We'll oftentimes end up having a lot of pride, where we end up hearing the voice of the enemy and not trusting anyone. We believe in ourselves, and all of our decisions are the best. And what will happen is the enemy wants us to get us to not trust the Lord, to not really have the faith that the Lord wants for us. There's a lot of people that don't really walk in the faith. I thought that I had faith before I went through my journey starting in 2009, but I had no faith. I thought I had faith just because I went to church and I prayed in tongues, but I'm like, no, I had no faith. Now I have faith for everything, faith to move, halfway across the country, to live in a place I've never lived at before, and have faith that the Lord will provide and connect in all the things that the Lord is now starting to do for us. It takes faith to do this. It takes faith to be in ministry and to help people get healed of their wounds and delivered. Deliverance is not an easy ministry. It's probably the hardest. And so it takes people that are very strong to walk through it. People that can forgive those who have hurt them, and that people are going to lie about you. That's par for the course with people that do deliverance, is you'll have people that are seeking deliverance, or they say that they are, that oftentimes have a lot of demonic spirits. And if they're not willing to do what it takes to get delivered, then their demons will manifest on you. And same thing if you have friends that are not healed and not delivered. They're going to say things and lie and gossip and try to destroy you. So what I love is in Hebrews chapter 11, where it talks about all these specific examples examples of people in the Bible that had to have faith. I see Victor Miranda on here. He ended up moving from Florida to Hawaii. Now, it takes a lot of faith to move from the intercontinental, or whatever, the United States, 48 contiguous states, out to Hawaii. Even though it sounds like, oh, that's a great paradise place, going to Hawaii. But it's expensive to live there. You go to Costco and you might spend $500 on getting some groceries there. So I'm going to read Hebrews chapter 11. It says, "Now faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen." So oftentimes, you may hope to have something that is good that the Lord would want for you, but you've not seen it yet. It might be children. You may want children for yourself. You may want a ministry. You want a full-time ministry. You may want a job that can provide you great amounts of money. You may want a wife or a husband that doesn't have Jezebel, that doesn't need to go through that much deliverance. It's not fun. You get married to someone that acts nice to you, and then once you say "I do," they start to trigger on you, and they start to say things that are not true. They try to control you, and they go after you. So a lot of people are waiting for a kingdom spouse, a truly godly spouse. And I can speak from experience that it's great. It's wonderful when you finally are able to have a spouse that is of the Lord, that you can be on the same team. But boy, it's horrible and miserable if you've got a ministry and you are in a relationship with someone that's not healed and not delivered, because they're going to trigger, they're going to manifest, they're going to lie about you, they're going to try and destroy what God has done. And that's not fun. It's not fun when you're in a ministry and you have a person that behind closed doors is being horrible, and then you end up trying to put on a happy face and trying to do ministry, and you feel like you're just a fake, because you're like, wait a minute, I'm miserable. This is not the way that it should be. So let me continue on in Hebrews 11. It says, "For by it the elders obtained a good testimony. By faith we understand that the worlds were framed by the word of God, so that the things which are seen were not made of things which are visible. By faith Abel offered to God a more excellent sacrifice than Cain, through which he obtained witness that he was righteous, God testifying of his gifts, and through it he, being dead, still speaks. By faith Enoch was taken away, so that he did not see death, and was not found because God had taken him. For before he was taken, he had this testimony, that he pleased God. But without faith it is impossible to please God." Did you know that? A lot of people don't. That's why when I started doing this ministry, I thought I knew what faith was, but boy, I did not. When you have to live day to day, and you only have a few pennies or dollars in your account, and you have to travel and pay for your gas and go from place to place and stay in people's homes, not knowing how long you're going to stay there, how long you're going to do ministry, and taking a love offering and not sure how you'll get your bills paid, and having to be late on certain things is not fun. It's a huge sacrifice, and a lot of people don't know that side of full-time ministry. When you are the one that has to trust the Lord, and that's really it's strengthened my faith, because I have to trust Him. I can't make like I used to when I was in sales and I was in banking and software. I had a guaranteed salary, and it was huge, compared to what I'm making now. And I ended up leaving that, and then having to give plasma and to do some menial jobs before I started to transition to full-time ministry. But I still had to trust the Lord for everything. I knew exactly what the Lord wanted me to do, but it's up to the Lord to speak to other people to help continue to support the ministry and see, frankly, great fruit in their own lives. If people aren't seeing fruit, if I were to have a ministry where all I did is talk about, I don't know, a lot of ministries don't even touch inner healing and deliverance. They have no idea. They have no clue. And they believe Christians can't have demons. And I'm like, wow, you guys were way off. And so I'm like, I start looking at it from that perspective. I'm like, why would you go to a church where your life is really a mess, and the messages that are coming to you aren't changing you or aren't changing your spouse? Now, I get it. We have free will. I could go out there and preach at a church every day about inner healing and deliverance, and we could see a bulk of people get healed and get delivered, but then there'd be a percentage that don't. But at least they're getting the truth. A lot of the churches aren't even speaking the truth. They're just saying, just be happy, smile, let's praise the Lord, sing 3 songs, and then go home and be miserable again, and have a spouse that controls, manipulates, and torments, and emotionally abuses the other spouse. What good is that? That's not who Jesus is. We should see life changes. We should see fruit that's similar to Jesus. If people are preaching the right message, if they're preaching the typical religious messages, they're not going to change. So anyway, let me go on. By faith, Abel offered to God a more excellent sacrifice than Cain, through which he obtained witness that he was righteous, God testifying of his gifts, and through it, he being dead still speaks. By faith, Enoch was taken away so that he did not see death, and was not found because God had taken him. For before he was taken, he had this testimony that he pleased God. But without faith, it is impossible to please him. For he who comes to God must believe that he is, and that he is a rewarder of those who diligently seek him. By faith, Noah, being divinely warned of things not yet seen, remember, it never rained before when the Lord asked Noah to build this huge ark. Never rained on the earth. It says, prepared an ark for the saving of his household, by which he condemned the world and became heir of the righteousness, which is according to faith. By faith, Abraham obeyed when he was called to go out to the place which he would receive as an inheritance. So he had to leave his family and travel for, I think it was a couple thousand miles. And it took him a long time to get there, into the promised land. So in many cases, and again, I've spoken this, a lot of people have been asked to leave from what they've known and been familiar with to a land that they don't know anybody, or very few people. And that's where their promised land is. And that's where they're going to be blessed, and that's where they're going to be doing ministry before Christ comes back. And that's what the Lord has called my wife and I, many, to do, is to move from Atlanta, Georgia to Dallas. And now we are seeing connections that are happening. And the fruit is becoming stronger and more prevalent. We're doing more sessions. We doing 14 sessions this week, personal sessions with people, doing more sessions next week, people all over the world. And we're looking to set up a center here where we can actually have people that can take people through inner healing and deliverance, both locally, in person, but also over the phone. And that's where the Lord has been taking us, is we're doing more and more of that, over the phone or over other messaging applications. All right, so by faith Abraham obeyed when he was called to go out to the place which he would receive as an inheritance, and he went out not knowing where he was going. Isn't it interesting? He didn't even know. At least we knew we're going to Dallas. So, by faith he dwelt in the land of promise, as in a foreign country, dwelling in tents with Isaac and Jacob, the heirs with him of the same promise. For he waited for the city which has foundations, whose builder and maker is God. By faith Sarah herself also received strength to conceive seed, and she bore a child when she was past the age. She was 90 years old. Abraham was 100, because she judged him faithful who had promised. Therefore from one man, and him as good as dead, were born as many as the stars of the sky in multitude, innumerable as the sand which is by the seashore. These all died in faith, not having received the promises, but having seen them from afar off, were assured of them, embraced them, and confessed that they were strangers and pilgrims on the earth. For those who say such things declare plainly that they seek a homeland. And truly, if they had called to mind that country from which they had come out, they would have had opportunity to return. But now they desire a better, that is, a heavenly country. Therefore God is not ashamed to be called their God, for he has prepared a city for them. By faith Abraham, when he was tested, offered up Isaac. And he who had received the promises offered up his only begotten Son, of whom it was said, In Isaac your seed shall be called, concluding that God was able to raise him up, even from the dead, from which he also received him a figurative sense. By faith Isaac blessed Jacob and Esau concerning things to come. By faith Jacob, when he was dying, blessed each of his sons of Joseph, and worshipped, leaning on the top of his staff. By faith Joseph, when he was dying, made mention of the departure of the children of Israel, and gave instructions concerning his bones. By faith Moses, when he was born, was hidden 3 months by his parents, because they saw he was a beautiful child, and they were not afraid of the king's command. By faith Moses, when he became of age, refused to be called the son of Pharaoh's daughter, choosing rather to suffer affliction with the people of God than to enjoy the passing pleasures of sin. So how many of you have chosen to live a much more challenging life? You know, it's hard for a rich man to get into heaven because they have all their needs met and they don't have to trust in the Lord for any of their needs. And that's why it's very hard for people who are very wealthy to get into heaven, because they're going to live a lifestyle that's not congruent with the Bible. You know, when I had lots of money, I didn't have to have any faith to provide for needs, whether it be clothes or food or vacations, whatever. It's like, whatever you want to do, we can do it. I didn't waste money whatsoever, but I didn't have any needs financially. They were all provided for. So now, when the Lord took me out of my lucrative business career into traveling and doing ministry and trusting the Lord for everything, then it's changed my faith level. And I wouldn't have it any other way. I'm enjoying the peace that the Lord has brought to me. In fact, that's what he asked me. He said, what do you want out of your life? When I was like 41, 42 years old, back in 2008. What is it that you want out of your life? And I'm like, well, I thought it was money, but no, I want peace. And the Lord said, great, I will take away all your money, and I will give you peace. And once I have your heart, then I can bring back the money, but you'll use it for kingdom purposes and not for your own selfish desires. So I have no selfish personal desires. Just want be able to eat, have groceries, and be able to buy books that I can help to sell and to give to other people that can benefit from those books, helping them get healed and delivered. So let me go on. Esteeming the reproach of Christ greater riches than the treasures in Egypt, for he looked to the reward. By faith Moses forsook Egypt, not fearing the wrath of the king, for he endured as seeing him who is invisible. By faith he kept the Passover and the sprinkling of blood, lest he who destroyed the firstborn should touch them. By faith they passed through the Red Sea as by dry land, whereas the Egyptians, attempting to do so, were drowned. By faith the walls of Jericho fell down after they were encircled for 7 days. By faith the harlot Rahab did not perish with those who did not believe, when she had received the spies with peace. And what more shall I say? For the time would fail me to tell of Gideon and Barak and Samson and Jephthah, also of David and Samuel and the prophets, who through faith subdued kingdoms, worked righteousness, obtained promises, stopped the mouths of lions, quenched the violence of fire, escaped the edge of the sword, out of weakness were made strong, became valiant in battle, turned to flight the armies of the aliens. Women received their dead raised to life again. Others were tortured, not accepting deliverance, that they might obtain a better resurrection. Still others had trial of mockings and scourgings, yes, and of chains and imprisonment. They were stoned, they were sawn in two. You can imagine being sawn in two with a saw. Ouch. That would be horrible. Were tempted, were slain with the sword. They wandered about in sheepskins and goatskins, being destitute, afflicted, tormented, of whom the world was not worthy. They wandered in deserts and mountains, in dens and caves of the earth. And all these, having obtained a good testimony through faith, did not receive the promise, God having provided something better for us, that they should not be made perfect apart from us. So understand, do you really trust in God? comes down to, are you going to stay in peace and trust God and obey what He says, or are you going to complain and complain and complain? And if you complain, you got to think about what happened to the Hebrews and the Israelites. They died out in the desert. God does not like us to complain. When we complain, we're on the enemy's territory. When we're at peace and we trust in the Lord, He wants to provide for us. And there's times that it takes longer than what you and I would like. I get it. I say most times people say that, oh, God's always on time. I'm like, no, there's some times that I believed He was late in what He was supposed to provide. But ultimately, I've seen it in our ministry as the Lord has provided along the road every time. And it is not easy. It's not an easy journey when you give your whole life to the Lord and you no longer are essentially participating in the worldly ways. And there's a lot of people in the church that will bow down to Baal and money and make that their God, make that their idol. And the Lord wants you to make Him your God and not money and mammon. So, alrighty, well, it's a beautiful sunshiny day here in the great state of Texas. They did re-elect Governor Abbott, so yay, he won handily over Mr. Beto. So, alright, I will let you guys go. See you on Facebook and see you on YouTube. Alright, bye-bye.